Since industrialization of the modern world, humans have nearly doubled the concentration of CO2 in the Earth's atmosphere. As a result of CO2's greenhouse gas warming effects, this is causing climate change at an unprecedented rate. The Paris Agreement of December 2015 aims to limit the average global temperature increase by 2 degrees Celsius. As a part of this agreement, Canada has committed to cutting emissions by 30% from 2005 levels by 2030. This video will discuss how Canada has implemented carbon pricing to achieve this goal and explore the details of the provincial and federal carbon pricing systems. Generally, there are two main ways of pricing carbon emissions: a simple carbon tax and a cap-and-trade system. A carbon tax places a monetary value per ton of CO2 emitted. This tax is then applied directly to the cost of hydrocarbon fuels, such as gasoline and diesel. Increasing prices will decrease demand, thus decreasing emissions. A cap-and-trade system is a more complex method of managing CO2 emissions. In this system, a limit is placed on the total amount of CO2 which can be emitted by an industry. Carbon credits are distributed amongst producers, and this credit acts as an allowance on their amount of CO2 emissions. Should a producer emit less than what they were credited for, they can trade their credits for profit to producers which may produce more CO2 emissions than they were permitted. So how have carbon taxes been implemented worldwide? Finland was the first to introduce a carbon tax in 1990. Other Scandinavian countries soon followed. Many other countries have been continuing the trend, and in 2019 it is expected that 15% of global emissions will be taxed. As of April 2019, a federal carbon pricing system is implemented across Canada. That being said, carbon pricing is not new to Canada. Alberta has had a specified gas emitters regulations in place since 2007, which changed to a hybrid system consisting of a carbon tax with performance standards in 2017. Since 2008, British Columbia has used a carbon tax, and in 2013, Quebec implemented a cap-and-trade system to complement its carbon levy from 2007. The new federal carbon pricing option will go into effect in provinces and territories which do not already have their own carbon pricing systems, or systems which do not meet the federal criteria. There are 4 conditions for the federal criteria, which are as follows. They need to be introduced in a timely way to ensure that a carbon price applies to the main sources of greenhouse gas emissions across Canada. Carbon pricing needs to be applied to the same key sources of greenhouse gas emissions across the country to ensure that it is effective and fair. Provinces can choose which type of system to implement, either a direct pricing system or a cap-and-trade system. The stringency of the carbon pricing system needs to increase over time, and this should be based in legislation to provide certainty to businesses and consumers and contribute to our national greenhouse gas emissions reduction target. For direct pricing systems, the minimum carbon cost is an explicit base system, beginning at $10 per ton of CO2 in 2018 and increasing incrementally to $50 per ton of CO2 in 2022. For cap-and-trade systems, provinces and territories must meet or exceed Canada's 30% reduction target for the year 2030. BC, Alberta, and Quebec's previous taxing systems meet the federal requirements, and these systems will remain in place. Ontario will take on the federal government's plan. Saskatchewan and Manitoba have fought against the federal carbon taxing mandate and will be forced to take on the federal government's plan. New Brunswick also did not develop its own plan and will be subject to the federal plan. Nova Scotia will be the only province implementing a cap-and-trade system. Newfoundland and Labrador have modified the federal government plans by implementing higher gasoline and diesel taxes, but not home heating taxes. Yukon and Nunavut are mostly following suit with the federal plan. The effects of carbon pricing will vary between provinces and regions based on the specific implementation of the policy and the varying economic factors for each region. Initial noticeable effects of carbon pricing for consumers is an increase in the cost of hydrocarbon fuels. Subsidies and tax credits are also made available to individuals and businesses which invest in green technologies, such as electric vehicles. As an example of how carbon tax can affect the economy of provinces on a whole, we can look to British Columbia, which has one of the longest implemented carbon taxes in Canada. Between 2007 and 2015, BC's provincial GDP grew 17%, while emissions were reduced by 4.7%. While these results may not be accurate for all provinces and territories due to the abundance of hydroelectric power and a more temperate climate in BC in comparison to other regions, these numbers demonstrate the potential effects of a carbon tax on a province's economy. Due to the complex nature of climate change and economics, only time will tell how effective the federal carbon pricing system is at reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We hope this video has provided a greater insight to carbon pricing in general and its application in Canada. Thanks for watching.